Okay, so I am back again with Screencast 3. This will be the last one for evolution. So let's get it finished. This is just a wrap up of some things that I want you to know there. Remember, big picture, big picture. All right, so I left off here. I kind of wasn't happy in the last one, so I'm going to finish a few things here with this. So if we talk about the result of genetic variation, again, remember part of natural selection, genetic variation. The more variations in genes, better it is for all of us. So the changes that result from either a mutation or genetic shuffling of cells may affect offspring in a lot of different ways. And again, three basic ways that we have there. So the structure of any organism is the result of a species' entire evolutionary history. I want to get a little bit more here. So, for example, the polar bear, as I said before, like others, has thick fur that keeps it warm in the cold environments on the pads, too. Polar bears have also evolved extra protection. All right. So, their extra protection, their white coat, functional change, molecular or biological changes affect how an organism works. So, for example, I'm going to give you a good example. All working muscles give out a tiny electrical impulse that we know from the nervous system. In some eels, however, the electrical input has evolved into an adaptation that actually helps it to capture food. And that is an important thing to keep in mind. So the muscles of those eels produce a massive shock that stuns or kills its prey. There are changes in DNA as well. Often, an example would be a mutation in the DNA in certain one-celled organisms that led to their ability to make enzymes that digest things like wood, WOOD. All right, behavioral changes. We have video clips as well coming up. They're evolved over the years. So, blinking. All right, in male and female fireflies allow them to fight each other. That's the lightning bug firefly, the rate of blinking. So just wanted to give you a couple of solid examples for that. Moving on. One thing that we do want you to know is the concept of adaptive radiation. We would have taught this with this example, which would have been the topic of our Regents Lab number 4. All right, and this is exhibited best through the changes in the beaks of the finches on the island called Daphne Major in the Galapagos archipelago. All right. Adaptive radiation describes a rapid evolutionary change or diversification of one single ancestral line. All right. And an example of this occurs in the variety of beak types seen in the finches. And this is the diagram from the Regents lab that I put in here so that you would know. So that's why when we get to the test, you'll be able to read it. And around the outside, you can see all of the 8 or 10 species of finches on the Galapagos Island. As you go inward, the size and the shape and the picture of their beak and what they do with that beak. The third circle in, biting tips, probing, edge crushing. All right. Going in further. All right. Crushing bills, what the bills do. Again, tips, notice, and then what they eat, plant, animal, 100%. So mainly means, they go and can go both ways and have a little of both there. So those finches have specialized beaks. And that depends mainly on the primary source of nutrition. All right, do they eat seeds, big seeds, small seeds? Do they eat nuts? Large nuts, small nuts, insects, do they suck nectar or something along those lines? All right, long pointy beak for maybe nectar. I don't want to go into exactly what they have. So we talked a little bit about adaptive radiation. We'll give you an example. Let's take a look again at the video clip. In 1977, there was an extended drought on the Galapagos Islands area, and that extended drought changed the frequency of larger beak size within the population by natural selection. Why? Because food changed. Dry conditions resulted in plant producing larger seeds with tougher seed casings. So the difference between the beaks in 76 and 78, there was a change in average beak depth within the finch population. Finches with larger beaks were better equipped to feed on the seeds and thus produced more offspring with larger beaks, an example of adaptive radiation. Another way that the regents could ask you to take a look at this is by taking a look at what is called, excuse me, a dichotomous key. And a dichotomous key is just a method of identification whereby groups of organisms are divided into two categories repeatedly. With each sequential division there you see, more information is revealed about the specific features. And when the organism no longer shares its totality of selected characteristics, it has been identified. So in other words, each line has two characteristics. If you're looking at bird W, if bird W is relatively long and slender, then it would be Certhidia. All right, if it's stout and heavy like bird X, go to number 2. All right, so you'll be able to see, go to number 3, a distinct bend, mostly flat. So you would be able to identify based on this. It's no big deal. I just like to do it this way. Sometimes a branching flow chart, but this is a series. Regents does a series of paired statements in a numbered sequence. All right, a dichotomous key. All right, again, an adaptation, which goes back. An adaptation to our is anything, all right? What it is are characteristics that make an individual suited to its environment and its way of life. All right, so adaptations can be structural, they can be behavioral, they can be physiological, they can be biochemical, they can also be actually, which we won't get into, developmental. And developmental is changes over the lifespan of an organism, early to late. So adaptation, special characteristics that make an organism well suited for a particular environment. It's adapted to. Go back to the natural selection panel in the last screencast. All right, what is a species? We want you to know what that is because we didn't do classification this year. However, the classification lineup would be a kingdom, phylum, a class, order, of families, genus, species, and now in IB, so I guess I'll throw it here. Domain goes first, so it's broken up. There are 8 categories of classification, going from least related domain down to the most related species. So we talk about species. Species of organisms can interbreed and produce viable offspring and are the most closely related. So we talk about diversification within a species. We're talking about what's called microevolution within a species. We're talking about between species, like your rabbit and a tiger. It's called macroevolution. So microevolution between a species. Think of microevolution for a second. Gene mutation, sexual reproduction, because they interbreed, all right? And gene movement without. And of course, natural selection would be more of, it can happen but a longer time. All right, macroevolution, larger, and changes a species. Just a couple words to get through. So patterns of change, the 3 that we want you to know from the regions. Number 1, changes in species are related to the environmental change. The environmental change is called a selection pressure. It's a term you need to know and understand. Go back to the beaks or listen in there or listen to the amoeba system. Remember, the drought changed the food. You either change the beak or you're going to die. So the selection pressure, changing of food. Species within short reproductive cycles and short lifespans evolve faster, and the failure to adapt results in death of a species, which we call extinction event. All right, existence can be supported there by fossils. You know when they left. All right, so, but don't run to use the word extinction always. It's like the word mutation. It's used too much. Evolve, ladies and gentlemen. All right, resistance. We'll talk about pesticide and antibiotic resistance. But resistance here, what we talk about any kind of resistance, all right, the evolution of, I'm going to actually talk more about antibiotic, but you can refer to pesticide, the same sort of idea. So antibiotics are chemicals that are produced by microbes that either kill or inhibit the growth of bacteria, and they're commonly used by us as a treatment for infections. So if we take a look at bacterial colonies, in a bacterial colony over many generations, a small proportion of bacteria may develop a resistance via a gene mutation, since there is no sexual reproduction there. So when treated with antibiotics, as you read across, okay, the antibiotic resistance bacteria may flourish while the non-resistant, the normal bacteria, will die. Over then the life side, the antibiotic resistant bacteria may also then develop, stay, multiply by binary fission, and eliminate, all right, by extinction, the normal bacteria. All right, so the introduction of an antibiotic, in this case from a selection pressure, has caused the resistance to become more frequent. So that's your selection pressure here. You put the antibiotic in, normal bacteria begin to die down, antibiotic resistance more. Again, usually here, again, it can become a resistant strain all on its own. Doesn't mean you're eliminating the blue bacteria. Just mean the resistant strain is there. All right, not good, not good. All right, same thing with a pesticide. Too much pesticide, insects become resistant to it. Insects become resistant. You got to find a new pesticide, but be careful because those pesticides get into our food. Video clips for that. Watch the video, please, please. In the end, rate of evolution, almost done here. Rate of evolution can be spoken of. Notice as you read this diagram here, any letter that did not reach the present time is extinct, which is almost every letter. Here, the dot is listed as the B. All right, you've got A, B, E, F, N, and I, even G, all common ancestors. So you want to be able to read this diagram. Common ancestor is an important word. A is the main common ancestor. All right, but where was the divergence of evolution here? Kept it going, kept it going. Then here's some sort of event caused a divergence in this species to change, go further up to present time, where you're left with just three. So an evolutionary tree, which is what this is: time, relationships, common ancestry, and extinct species. Keep that in mind as you read those and suggest explanation. All right, here is a series of questions that you can take a look at, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'll leave these here for you. Remember, this was supposed to be for the regions, so we were going to stop and do all of these. All right, there's another set here, all regions, who knows? Some of these might end up on your test, or we'll bring this back on quiz day in a couple of weeks. Well, actually on Thursday, by the time this goes up. I'm actually doing this on May 26th. And question there, question there. All right, question here. And then we're at the end.